Hey everyone, welcome back. I hope you are ready to make a cute little teddy bear. So what we're gonna need, some chenille yarn, or you can use a blanket yarn, whatever you want to choose. I'm using Parfait Chunky in Toffee. And then you also need some yarn in like a black for his nose. I'm using a 4mm crochet hook. You'll need some scissors, some stitch markers, yarn needle, some safety eyes. I got mine from AliExpress. You can find them on Amazon, or I think just about any craft store is going to carry them. I'll be using some double-ended knitting needles for attaching pieces later on. And we're going to need some fluff. So let's get started. So we're going to start with making the arms. We're obviously going to need 2 of those. So we're going to start with our magic ring. So again, those 2 fingers wrap around, cross over, hook under, grab on, through, and then turn again. And I always like to bring this tail through a couple times, makes it easier to close it up later. So then we're going to do 6 single crochet into our magic ring. So 1, 2, and then with chenille yarn, because it's a little bit trickier to close up your magic ring, after my first couple of stitches, I like to go ahead and pull it a little bit just to make sure it's gliding through nicely. And then let's finish those 6. So 3, 4, 5, and 6. So here is where we will now close up our magic ring. So take that tail, hold on to your last stitch and pull. Don't pull too tight. You don't want it to kind of disfigure what you just created. And then we are going to do 7 rows of 6 stitches. So starting in that first stitch, we've got 1. And here we will take a stitch marker, mark that first stitch, and continue around. 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And continue that for 6 more rows. Alright, so at the end of your 7th row, I'm going to take my hook out for a second so I can tuck that tail in. Just make sure it's in the arm. Because the arms are so small with a Parfait Chunky, with a blanket it might be a little bit larger, so if you want to add some stuffing you can. I leave it unstuffed. So then what we're going to do is we're going to kind of fold the arm in half so you can see both sides together. And we're going to crochet 3 to close it off. So I'm going to insert into that first stitch and then also through the last stitch that I did on my last row. Pull through, do 1. We're going to repeat that in the next stitch over. 2 and 3. You're not going to need a very long tail when you cut your yarn, because we'll crochet it into the body later. So then to finish that off, you're just going to pull your yarn out and pull tight. So there's 1, and remember we're going to need a second one, so go ahead and do that. Alright, so now we have 2 arms, so we'll set those aside until we need them later. Next up, we're going to make 2 feet. So again, we're going to start with that magic ring with 6 single crochet. One, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We're going to close up that circle. The next row, we are going to do 6 increase so that we end with 12 stitches. There's our first stitch, place stitch marker, and go to that increase, 5 more increases, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Now we're going to do 3 rows of 12. Alright, there is the end of my row 3. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to cut. You don't need you don't really need much of a tail on this. A little bit, but not much. So then to fasten off, we're going to insert into the next stitch, pull through, but we're not going to do a single crochet, we're going to do a slip stitch. And then just pull through. And then tuck the tail inside from your magic ring. And then we'll make another one. Alright, we're done with both feet. We are not going to fasten off our second foot. What we're going to do instead is we're going to attach it to our first foot. So while leaving the hook, the yarn on your hook from your second foot, you're going to take your first foot. So where you did your fasten off, you're going to insert your hook into that stitch and do a single crochet into that. And that is your new first stitch for your next row. And you're going to finish crocheting around so the other 11 stitches from this foot. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. And then for that yarn tail, I'm just going to push it to the back for now. So a couple options here. You could just go ahead and go on and attach it to the second foot. What I'm going to do, so I don't have to sew up a hole between the legs later, I'm going to do a decrease to attach. So I'm going to go into that first stitch, pull up, the last stitch from your second leg, same thing, insert and pull another loop through, and then this is going to be your first stitch on the second leg. So now you're going to have 4 loops on your hook. Yarn over, pull all the way through. What that's doing is it's making sure that there's not going to be a hole in between the legs that you have to sew up later. And then we'll do the other 11 stitches around that second foot. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Get some more yarn off of here. Alright, so I'm just going to tuck that tail into one of the feet so it's out of the way. I don't have to worry about it. Next row, what we're going to do is we're going to do 3 single crochet, 1 increase. Repeat that 6 times all the way around. You will end with 30 stitches. So 1, 2, 3. Then our increase, 4, 5. Repeat all the way around. Next up is going to be 2 rows of 30. Okay, now that you're done with your 2 rows of 30, go ahead and double check that you don't have any holes in between your legs. If you do, take that tail, sew them up. That way none of your stuffing showing through. Just kind of keeps everything looking nice and clean. So next row, we are going to do 3 single crochet and then 1 decrease so that we end with 24 stitches. So we'll start with 1, 2, 3, then our decrease. So remember, we're going to take the front loop of the next 2 stitches, yarn under, pull through, yarn over, pull through. I'm going to do that all the way around. Okay, next up, 2 rows of 24. Alright, now that we're done with those 2 rows, this is where I like to start stuffing a little bit. So I'm going to take a little bit, make sure you push it all the way down into the feet. Both feet. The key is to try not to overstuff your buddies. You don't want them to start getting distorted because there's too much in there. But you also don't want there to be so little that they're like super floppy, unless that's your preference. No judging here. Everybody likes what they like in a stuffed animal. These can be nice and squishy. Alright, next row, we are going to do 2 single crochet followed by a decrease all the way around. You'll end with 18 stitches. Alright, this time around we're going to do just 1 row of 18 stitches. I'm going to go ahead and add a little bit more stuffing at this point. Alright, next row we are going to do 1 single crochet followed by a decrease. You'll end with 12 stitches. Alright, next row we're going to need our arms that we crocheted first. So we're going to start with 3 single crochet. 1, 2, 3. Then we're going to take our first arm. I like to start with the tail towards the back of the work where my hook is. I'm going to get it under my working yarn. So what you're going to do here is you're going to insert your hook through that first stitch on your arm. Get that tail out of the way. And then into the next stitch of the body that you're working on. Pull through both pieces and finish off your single crochet. And you repeat that 3 times. The last stitch. And your arm is attached. Where did that come from? Then we're going to do another 3 single crochet. And on this arm, I'm going to have the crochet still to the back of the work, or the tail to the back of the work. So insert first stitch of the arm and next stitch in the body. Single crochet. Two and 3. You'll see why in a couple rows why I wanted both tails over here. But for now we're going to take those 2 tails, move them to the front of the work so we can make our next row. So in the next round we are going to do 12 increases. So an increase in every stitch, ending with 24 stitches. So then what I'm going to do next, I'm going to go ahead and take some more stuffing, finish stuffing the body. A little bit more. Okay, this is where those tails being close together is going to be helpful. So I'm going to take those two tails and I'm going to tie them together. But you don't want to pull too tight because you don't want to pull and distort your piece. Tie a couple knots. And then go ahead and tuck those tails just down into the body. Now those arms are a lot more secure because there's not a loose thread in that stitch. And we will continue on. So the next row, we are going to do 1 single crochet followed by an increase. Repeat 12 times, so you'll end with 36 stitches. This may be a good moment. So like sometimes when you're working with yarn, you're gonna have a manufacturer's knot in the middle. I personally like to cut those out. I'll show you how I handle that here in a second. It's on an increase. Yeah. So on my next stitch, I'm going to pull through, but I'm not going to finish my single crochet yet. I'm going to take the other part that's still attached to my skein, and I'm going to use that to finish my single crochet. That way, I didn't have to make some ugly knot to try and work around that might accidentally wind up on the outside. Sometimes manufacturer's knots are a little weak and they'll come apart with too much working. Obviously, you don't want your piece falling apart, so kind of taking care of it yourself is always highly recommended. We're going to finish that single crochet increase the rest of the way around. So when you have to kind of handle one of those manufacturer's knots, so you have these two tails sitting here, what I'm going to do is I tie that off a couple times just to secure it in there, that my knot is for sure on the inside, and tuck those tails right on down. So they're out of the way. Next up, I'm going to get some more yarn to work with. So next up, we're going to do a row of 36. So just straight single crochet all the way around. Okay, when I finish that row, I like taking my second stitch marker and placing it in between the last two rows that I did on the front of the work. And how do you know which is the front and which is the back? So any of the patterns that I've written for myself, I always start with working across the back of the work. Some other crocheter pattern designers work the other way around, where this would be the front of the work and this would be the back. It just depends on personal preference on how a pattern was written. It's not always super clear as you're going through a pattern until you get further along which is going to be the front, which is going to be the back. It takes a little bit of practice to kind of understand which is going to be which, unless there's any defining features, like if you crocheted in a tail or had like little toes or something out here. But for the purposes of this tutorial, the first stitches that you start in a row are going to be across the back, and then you have the front. So I like to place that there. It helps me keep track of how many rows I've done, because we're getting ready to do 4 more rows of 36. So let's do that. So we'll end with 5 rows of 36 single crochet. All right, now that you're done with your 5 rows, so where we place that stitch marker after our last increase row, so you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we're going to leave that stitch marker in place for now. It'll be important in a couple of rows. So all the rest of the rows that we're going to do are going to have decreases in them so we can finish forming the top of the head. So first row is going to be 4 single crochet followed by a decrease. And you will end with 30 stitches. 2, 3, 4. Do that decrease. And continue all the way around. All right, next row. 3 single crochet followed by a decrease. You will end with 24 stitches. Okay, now that we're done with that row, we're going to place the safety eyes. So now you will see why that stitch marker is important. So I'm using some sinker eyes. You'll see that the eye itself kind of sinks into the backing. But the reason I leave that stitch marker in place is I'm going to count up 1, 2, 3, 4. So this is the row that I'm going to place the eyes in. So then start with placing 1, come across, place the second one, make sure we're even. You should have about 4 or 5 stitches visible in between. I am using 20mm safety eyes. If you're doing blanket yarn or like Sweet Snuggles light, I would probably use like a 25mm eye. So always definitely adjust your eye size based on what yarn you are using. Those look pretty centered to me. Make sure pupils are lined up the way I want them to be. And then, because my fingers are not strong enough to push the back all the way on, my husband helped create this little tool for me. So basically a basic clamp, but he drilled a hole into the end so the back of the eye can go through there. Place it on and clamp it down. And you see that it will sink down into, so it gives a nice flush look. The back of the eye has gone down past a notch on the back of that safety eye, so that eye is going nowhere. And I will do that on the other one. There are some safety eyes that have much smaller backings that are much easier to put on without the use of additional tools. They are not as secure, but I mean, they can be just as cute. Then you just have to warn anybody that you may be gifting it to or selling it to, not suitable for children under 3 because those parts can be a little dangerous for them. And at this point, I also like to go ahead and start stuffing the head. Make sure you've got stuffing tucked in between those eyes, because like the backings of my eyes are quite large, so if I don't pay attention to it, this part won't have any stuffing in it and it would look kind of awkward. A little bit more. Okay, then you can go ahead and remove that stitch marker from the front. We no longer need it there. Next row up, we are going to do 2 single crochet, 1 decrease. All the way around, you will end with 18 stitches. Next row up is going to be 1 single crochet, decrease, and you will end with 12 stitches. Okay, good time to go ahead and add some more stuffing. And the next row will wind up with a pretty small opening, so You're gonna wanna finish stuffing to whatever level you would like it to be. Again, making sure you've got plenty in there, not too much, not too little. Little Goldilocks moment there. Okay. Final row, we're going to do 6 decreases, ending with 6 stitches. All right, then we're going to cut the yarn, leaving a little bit of a tail so that we can fasten off. So insert that hook so we can do a slip stitch. Now you will need your yarn needle. What we're going to do is we're going to insert the yarn needle through the front loop of all those 6 stitches we just did. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Kind of pull tight, but not too tight so you don't break your yarn. And then what I like to do is I will then insert my needle in and then back up a couple times around that closing circle, just so everything's nice and secure in there. And then to finish off, I will insert my hook into the center of that, come out, back a couple rows. And then just for security, what I like to do is I will take my yarn, kind of go diagonal from where I am, insert my needle, leave a little loop on there so that I can create a knot. And then I will insert my needle on one of the sides of the knot and come back out down further. If you notice, you don't even see the knot. Unless you're looking real hard, you can't even see where that yarn was. And then you can either cut this tail off, or I like to take my scissors and tuck it into the piece so I don't have a lot of waste going on. Okay. So our little guy's probably looking a little funny right now because he doesn't have ears or a nose or anything. But this is where you say in a lot of crochet projects, trust the process. So we're going to set him aside. Next up, we're going to make his little muzzle that his nose will go onto. So again, we're going to start with that magic ring. And we're going to do 6 single crochet into our magic ring. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Close up your magic ring. Then we're going to do 6 increase to end with 12 stitches. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Then next round, it's going to do 1 single crochet followed by an increase so that you end up with 18 stitches. One increase, 2, 3, and repeat all the way around. Then we're going to do a round of 18 stitches. Okay, now that you're done with that, we're going to leave a long tail so that we can sew the piece on. I like to leave probably, I don't know, 18 inches or so. So then we will fasten off like we have other pieces previously with a slip stitch. Pull that all the way through. And we're going to go ahead and attach this. So you're going to take just a little bit of stuffing. I kind of roll it up a little bit, make it easier to work with. And get our body back. So we're going to place it so that the top of the nose is right in between the eyes. Or I should say the top of the muzzle will be right in between the eyes. And then this is where I like to use double-ended knitting needles, mostly because it's what I had on hand. If you got like any sort of long pins or whatever, I use it to hold the piece in place while I sew it on. So then we will take our yarn needle, and then what I will do, because I like to start my yarn down towards the bottom, I like to kind of turn my buddy upside down and kind of push the body away so you can see where you're working. So you're going to insert the needle into the head, just under like 1 or 2 stitches. Pull through, and then it's going to come up through your muzzle. Watch out for it wrapping around legs or arms. So you're going to do that all the way around, just making sure that it is nice and secure on the head. So sometimes up around the eyes it can be a little tough because of the backing on the eye, depending on how close you are. It's like I've got plenty of room behind that though. So depending on your comfort level with sewing, it can kind of take a little bit of time and practice to get used to getting pieces on securely and straight, and knowing if you have enough stuffing in there or not. If you notice it doesn't feel like you have enough stuffing in there before you're done, always feel free to add more. When I get back to where I started, so what I will do is I kind of go under where my first stitch was, pull through leaving a loop so that I can create a knot there. And then we will insert again and come out somewhere on the side of your head. That way that knot is hidden, you can't see it, but everything is nice and secure. I'm gonna bring this a little bit further back so I can do my little knot for security, because I don't want anything falling apart. And same thing, I always wind up with a tail that's way too long. But again, so I don't have waste, it all goes back into the buddy. We now have the muzzle attached. So next up, let's make some ears. Obviously, we're going to need 2 of those. So let's start with 6 single crochet into a magic ring. Next up, we're going to do 6 increase to end with 12 stitches. All right, next row, we are going to do 3 single crochet increase. You're going to end with 15 stitches. Then your next row, you're going to do 3 single crochet decrease and go back down to 12 stitches. So 1, 2, 3, decrease, 6, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. All right, now I'm going to tuck that tail from the magic ring inside. We're going to do like we did with the arms, where we're going to fold it in half and we're going to close it up with 6 single crochet. So I inserted my hook into that first stitch and turn it back to the stitch I just created. So it's kind of a tight turn, but believe me, it can be done. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And then we'll also need a long tail on there to sew this onto the head. But before we can do that, we will need to make a second ear. All right, we've got 2 ears done. All right, so for placement, let me get one of these picked up. All right, I always start with my tail towards the center, but we're gonna go, you see your center circle that you fastened off with, so you're gonna go down 1, 2, that is gonna be one end. Then your other end is gonna be usually about across the top of your eye, if you use about the same size I did. And I like to go back 1, 2, 3, 4 stitches. So then especially with my first stitch, I like to do it a couple times. Make it nice and secure. And then what I like to do is then I'll insert my hook pretty much where I've been starting my stitches, and I'll come down to where the bottom part of my ear is gonna be, and go ahead and secure that part as well. I don't know why he's being so slippery. Do that again, couple stitches through. Just make sure that I have it placed right. I can see, I like where it's placed with the eye. It's not going to wind up like too far down because I did something weird while I was sewing it on. But then nails kind of follow and place stitches all the way along. So he is nice and secure. Okay, now that ear is on there nice and secure, I'll come back in. I'm just going to choose a point back here to come through. And I'll take my yarn needle off. I'll do this for the other side of the ear. So again, 1, 2 rows away. Make sure you're right across. Make sure you're right across from that other ear so that we're not uneven. And again, still 1, 2, 3, 4. I'll sew the second ear on. Same as the other one, coming down to where the bottom part of the ear is going to be. So I can go ahead and secure that stitch as well. A couple stitches So those edges are nice and tight. And then finish sewing the ear. Whoops. Get my yarn back on the needle. One more stitch. And then somewhere right along where that last stitch came through, out the same stitch in the tail from your first ear. And here what I will do is I will tie a couple of knots. And here I usually will go ahead and cut these tails off. And we can move on to the next step, which is going to be his nose. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our black yarn, take, I don't know, maybe about 2 feet or so. Go ahead and cut some of that off. And then take our yarn needle. And we're going to stitch on his nose. So what I do is I'm going to start just inserting my needle down here somewhere and coming up centered right above our magic circle. Pull up, leave a little bit of a tail. And then we're going to come up. Make sure you're coming in just right inside the eye. 1, 2, 3 rows back from your point. Insert and come back out in the same spot. And you're going to repeat on the other side. And then I typically turn it upside down from me so I can kind of see a little bit better of what is happening. So then I'm going to come from where I last inserted the hook, I'm going to come over one from there. I always make sure to kind of guide where that yarn's going to go. Come back out. And over another stitch. Over again. But if you notice, that is not a complete nose. We still got plenty to fill in. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to start going into all the same places that I've inserted my hook before and make sure that I'm guiding the yarn to be sitting where I need it to fill in those gaps. About 2 to 3 times through each spot. So you don't want to overdo it, but you definitely want full coverage on the nose and you don't want any of that body color showing through. And sometimes some of your fuzz or your polyfill is going to kind of come out with it. That's okay. Just clean it up as you go. I don't think I've ever counted how many times I actually go through. I just kind of keep doing it until I feel good about it, until I like the way it looks. Still got a few more to go. Okay, and it's looking pretty good. Actually, I'm going to get one there. And one more over here. Then, before I finish off, because if you'll notice, it doesn't look super even across the top. To clean that up, I'm going to come up to my outside, come back over to my beginning end, pull through, make sure I don't lose my yarn, and then just come all the way across, and then I'll come back out where I started my yarn. Don't pull too tight. Then we're going to tie that a couple times. those threads a little bit. And then go ahead and tuck your tails back in. Get some of this black fuzz off there from the yarn. There you have it. Teddy bear. Isn't he cute? It's nice and cuddly. Cute little nose. I hope you all had fun making this. I had so much fun teaching it. I love making these little dudes. If you want a print-off pattern, I will soon have this up on Etsy or Ravelry, probably both. So if you want like a physical copy, it'll be like a couple bucks. I'll have the link down in the description once it's available. Till next time, make sure you like and subscribe, and I'll see you later. Bye.